morning. This is Diane Kelly with Fresh View Business Solutions, your certified exit planner. And we're always looking for advisors that you may need on your team. We like to be collaborative and work with other team advisors that you have, whether it's your banker or your attorney, your accountant, people who are working with you on a daily basis. So today we're going to bring in Andrea Jensen, and Andrea is the founder and CEO of Cashflow CFO, a fractional CFO and accounting partner that helps scaling business owners make smart financial decisions based on actual data. She's also the creator of the Predictable Profit Accelerator, a 5-step holistic approach to securing your business finances. Prior to opening her CFO firm, Andrea ran the finance department for some of the largest companies in the world and was recently named a top 5 business strategist for scaling a business in 2023 by Success in Forbes magazine. So she's got the platform to go with the experience here. Scaling a company is really important for our business owners. And besides being an incredible entrepreneur, investor, and consultant, Andrea is also a wife, a mother, a soccer player, and a passionate volunteer. And I did not know about the soccer. We were just having that conversation offline. So welcome, Andrea, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing your story and why clients who maybe are not involved in exit planning should be, how you can help them with that, and also other things that you can help them with along the way when they're growing their business, because that's also where we want them to go and have some success in that regard too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about this stuff because, your business is your biggest asset that you will own, as a, in your life and in your portfolio. And so what we see, unfortunately, is a lot of business owners aren't treating it as an asset. And, your assets should be appreciating in value every year that you are holding that asset. And so your business should be doing that as well, so that when you're ready to exit your business, you have all this built-in value and you're not scrambling to put all the pieces together that are going to help you exit for a high multiple, and, really be able to fund what's next in your life, whether that's retirement or whether you're off to another venture. You want to put the pieces in place over the years because this takes time.
Right.
And so that's why I'm really excited about this conversation, so we can help the listeners and the business owners out there understand what are the steps I need to be taking now, and also who do I need to have on my team to help me achieve those things.
Yeah, one of the things I love, and I'm sure you hear it all the time, is my business is my baby, or my business is my retirement plan. And we're like, okay, what does that look like? Number one. Number two, cut the umbilical cord because it's an asset.
Yep,
And you need
absolutely.
to treat it as such and grow it as such and protect it as such, right? So, in the big picture of things, I'm sure a lot of the business owners don't know what a CFO is. So, what is a CFO and why a fractional CFO?
Yes, great question. And, a CFO is a Chief Financial Officer. And typically, a CFO is a position that you would see in a large corporation. The pay range for a CFO is, 100 to 250 plus full benefits and all the things. That's not attainable, or that's not, something that a small business has access to, right? They don't have the resources to have that position in their company full time.
Right.
So the purpose of the CFO, their role is to help guide and create the financial strategy for the business entity. So essentially, the business owner, the shareholders, they say these are the financial objectives for this entity for this time duration. And the CFO goes and crafts the strategy and the financial roadmap on how they're going to achieve those goals in those intervals. The fractional piece enters in when we look at, yes, we know small businesses. And when we say small businesses, there's a big range, right? I think it's up to 50 million is considered technically a small business. So anybody who is under that, right? They're not going to be able to have this position full time, but they need that financial strategy. They need that person that's on their team, that's on their, C level, that the top level of the company, that's saying, here's how we're going to achieve our goals. Here's goals that are even reasonable for us to achieve. Here's the team we're going to need. Here's how much we can pay them. Here's our marketing channels. Here's our customer acquisition budget. All of these things, they put all those components, all those little pieces together so that the business owner knows exactly what they need to do and when. And they're also watching the numbers. So they're preparing a forecast and a budget. And every month, they're comparing budget versus actual and having that conversation of, here's where we hit the mark and here's where we didn't. What do we need to do to continue, to do the good stuff? And what do we need to fix or stop doing or, reallocate resources to, so that we stay on that plan.
Yeah.
That we know if we do all these things and our numbers are matching, we're going to hit that financial goal. So that's the role that the CFO plays in the business. And
I think the
every
most
business owner
important
needs
thing here is that their accountant looks at the past, what's happened, and the CFO looks at the future, like you said, and the projections and the forecasting. So not only where are you and where were you, but where are we going and how are we going to get there? And I think that's really critical.
Yeah. And that's another thing that, Diane, I think is really worth mentioning. A lot of people go, oh, well, I have an accountant. I have a CPA.
Right.
Okay, but what does your CPA do? Do they do your tax returns or do they help you advise your company? So there's a managerial accounting aspect, and there's a tax, and there's an audit, and there's all the other stuff. Your CPA is 90% of the time doing your taxes. And so they're looking at, like you just said, historical data. Yeah, they might be telling you how to, spend this, spend that, so that you
Cut expenses here or whatever. Yeah.
minimize your tax exposure, right? But they're not helping you to achieve those financial goals, and they're not digging into, what did your last marketing channel produce as far as an ROI, and what's your customer lifetime value. They would just look at you like, yeah, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of business owners get confused because they think, oh, I have a CPA, completely different from a CFO.
Yeah. So you're not preparing their taxes and everything like that, but you're looking at the projections and how maybe to even save more on that. So for one of those companies that's considered small business, when would they need a CFO? What are some of the triggers or signs that they need help in this area?
Yes. So for the most part, a company that is going from 6 figures to 7 figures absolutely needs a CFO. When you go from 6 figures to 7 figures, everything expands in the financial realm of the business, right? It's higher transaction volume, which means more opportunity for money leaks in the business. You probably need to hire more team to be able to fulfill on the sales that you're making. So you need to understand, what's my capacity and how am I planning and how much can I afford for each position? It's always an opportunity to revisit your pricing, because a lot of times when you're starting off in your business or you're growing it in the 6 figures and the high 6 figures, you're still testing a lot of your business model, right? And when you find you've got the traction and now you're seeing the sales come in, it's time to revisit and make sure that you're profitable on those sales that you're making. And that's where we see a lot of business owners who, all the way up to the 5 and 10 million, they're not profitable. So they're like, yeah, we're doing great. We're selling, our revenue is this. And we go, well, let's look at the bottom line. And we see 2% to 10%. We're like, you can't grow a business with those margins.
Yeah. And all
So
I hear is, well, our revenue went up 20%, but the profit may have gone down 10%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's times where that makes sense, right?
Sure.
There's times when you're in those building periods that you go, okay, if I spend this, then I'm going to get this. But a lot of times there isn't that strategy behind it. It's just, they're kind of winging it still.
By the seat of their pants, usually.
Yeah, and they just don't understand all the financial metrics
Yeah.
that make up a profitable business model. And so taking it back to what we said, this is an asset, right? You need to optimize the value of this asset. And if you, for some reason, get sick tomorrow and have to sell your business, and somebody comes and looks at it and goes, yeah, you're making all these sales, but you have no money, your business model is broken, no one's going to buy that or pay you any money for it.
Exactly, exactly. So a lot of that comes down to cash flow. And there are times, like you said, that cash flow ebbs and then it increases for different reasons. But if you're tracking that, you're going to have a lot better handle on what you're doing and why you're doing it. So talk a little bit about cash flow, because I know that's your specialty.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we look at the cash flow in a business, right? Cash flow is the lifeblood. It's how you're going to pay your bills, pay your team, how you're going to order more supplies if you have inventory, especially. You really need to be watching this tight because you've got money that could be sitting on the shelf if you're not selling those products and turning those things over. So, when we look at cash flow, we want to look at it from several different angles, right? We want to make sure that we've got enough money in reserves that we can cover our monthly burn rate. You want to have 2 to 3 months worth of reserves in the bank that that if my sales took a dip or something happened in the economy, you've got time to make adjustments in the business that you need to. So you have that money in reserve. But you also want to be looking at the cash flows. What's coming in the door? What are my payment terms that my customers are paying? What do I have sitting out in receivables? Do you have some big clients that aren't paying on time and it's really, causing uh, a problem with the cash flow and a crunch? Yeah, and preventing you from, I think what a lot of business owners don't realize is that if they're not being diligent with the way that they receive money in the business, it inhibits the way that they spend money in the business. And that could be your vendors, your suppliers might change your credit terms because you're not making your payments on time. Even though you have every intention to do it, you're just not collecting the money, right? The right way up front. That means you're not being able to pay your bills. That's when people are scrambling to make payroll and they're, all these other things. And they're just like, scratching their head going, I don't understand why I'm making all these sales and there's still no money left over. There's no money in the company. And it's because their cash flow isn't managed in a way that is, creating that flow and making sure that they've thought out every component of the budget, right? How much do they need and when do they need it? And looking at things like seasonality, right? You need to have a plan. If you know that your business is slow during the summer, for example, you've got to be planning all the other months and stocking more money away to cover that. So there's just cash flow has so many nuances, and each business model is going to have its own specific strategic way that cash flow needs to be managed. So that's why every business needs the CFO brain, because they step back and look at the big picture and prepare this big plan for the business owner.
It sounds a lot smarter than winging it. That doesn't work, and I've seen that happen to so many business owners. And talking about seasonal, I mean, here in Arizona, a lot of things are very seasonal, and to point do slow down in the summer, and then they're struggling. Conversely, I had a client who's a pool contractor, so their high time is like February through October, and then they were like low side through the winter months. So these are all really important things to pre-plan for instead of getting caught in that trap and finding yourself up against a rock and a hard spot. What about credit lines and financing for cash flow? How do you feel about that, and is it recommended?
Yeah, so we definitely recommend every business have a line of credit. You don't have to pay any money if you don't use it, right? So it's good to have it. And the best time to get a line of credit is when you don't need it. So I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you think about it, when you don't need it, that means your finances are probably really strong and you're not in a cash flow crunch where you're desperate for it. And if you go to a banker when you're already in a cash flow crunch, they're going to look at your financials And they're going to say, yeah, I don't think that I should lend to you because I'm worried you're not going to be able to pay my payments back. And so you always want to go and secure that line of credit ahead of time when things are good, when you have strong financial reports and tax returns and things like that. And also, have a relationship with your banker. And so year round, you should be talking to your banker so that they know who you are. They know what you're trying to achieve with your asset, that is your business. And they can help partner with you to bring solutions to the company. And then when you do need them, right, they already know who you are. You're not just somebody walking in off the street that you're saying, hey, I need to borrow some money. And they have to start from scratch to get to know you and your business and things like that.
Right. And it really does come down to relationships. So I like what you're saying about having these advisors in place along the way for their advice, but also before you may need their services, especially when it comes to banking. And I know I was just talking to a contractor the other day who said he just got these huge jobs and he doesn't know how he's going to finance it. He's never gotten a credit line, even though I've recommended it. And I said, well, you better go now before all this stuff starts hitting. So the banker sees your financials from last year, which are very favorable. You get the credit line in place, and then you can help fund it. On the other side, and we'll kind of dive a little bit into the exit planning. I was just talking to an advisor who had a client, two brothers who were in business together, and they had a credit line on the business. And one of the brothers died. And guess what? The bank called the credit line due.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't have the provision, the cash flow to pay the credit line off. So now the remaining brother is having to sell inventory to pay the credit line, which is jeopardizing his business. And it's questionable if he'll be able to even continue in business at that level. So, here you go. And then finding another credit line because they're actively using it is going to be difficult at best. I know even in my situation, I had a very small credit line when my husband passed away. And one day I was looking at the account after he passed away. I went, what's wrong with my credit line? So I went in and questioned them and they said, well, we closed it. And there's no notification, none. And I said, well, why'd you do that? And they said, well, he was a co-signer on the account and he's deceased. I said, but I'm the owner of the company and I'm still here. And they didn't care.
Yeah.
And mine, fortunately, was small enough that it was no big deal. I went to another bank, got 5 times the credit line. It wasn't a problem. But let's take a contractor who has $1 million credit line. Okay. And they've got active jobs going, and all of a sudden something happens to that business owner, and they're the sole signer on that credit line, and it becomes due.
Yeah.
So that's where the planning comes in. And these businesses need to have key person life insurance in there. They need to cover any debt, whether it's their PPP loans or their SBA loans or their credit lines. They need to have enough life insurance to liquidate that should something happen to them, and they don't go there. So that's my soapbox.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
There's a mental shift that all business owners need to make at some point in the lifespan of their business. In the beginning, it's hustle, 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 sell, 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 sell. Find out what it is that sticks, right? That the people are, the offer that people really want. Once you get that in place, your mentality needs to shift to protect. Because you've worked so hard to build this, now you need to protect it. And so that means exactly all the things you just said, right? You want to make sure you have a business attorney. You want to make sure you have, when you look at all the financial experts you need on your team when you're in the protect mode, you're looking at a trust, you're looking at, IP attorneys, just, all kinds of things that business owners need to switch gears. They need to get to that point where they're like, okay, I've got a successful, stable business. Now, what do I need to do to protect it? Another thing is make sure you have the right insurance coverage, right? If there's a fire or a flood or something happens to your ability to sell, do you have the right coverage? Because it's based on revenue.
Yep.
And the revenue grows, you have to go back and, have those conversations with all these different,
Advisors.
protectors,
This is
advisors and protectors of your business.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And that's one of the first things we review is to make sure that those things are in place, that they're covered adequately, that they're not paying more than they need to for the necessary coverage. But by the same token, right now, of course, big thing in the property and casualty arena is cybersecurity. So they need to protect that as well.
Yeah.
So without that protection, they're flying again by the seat of their pants. So what are the most important steps while we're talking about people looking maybe to sell their business or eventually exit? What are the most important steps that they should be taking now, and how far in advance should they be doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the first place that the business owner should start is to understand or determine what is the number that I will need to sell this business for in order to have the lifestyle that I want for X number of years, or to live off the interest, of the money that they're going to park in another asset, right? Because all you're doing is you're taking active income from this asset and you're moving it to passive income in some other asset, right? So
I
you
call it
need
harvesting. You harvest the wealth that you built in the business.
Yep, absolutely. I love that term. And that's so true because that's what you're doing, but you have to understand what's that number that I need, right? So once you understand what the number is, then you look at, well, where am I at now? And what is this gap that I need to close? And that's the financial strategy. That's the plan that you need to put in place to understand, how much value you need to build in the business so that you can have those options to exit when you're ready to do that. And so that's really where the CFO comes in, and they say, here's what you tell me you want. Here's where you're at. Here's all the steps in between. And that can take anywhere from 2 years to 5 years to, that really just depends on, number one, your tolerance for risk, because when you're scaling a company, you have to be willing to, you know, take out money to finance that growth, right? Because you can only grow a company, you can fund it a couple ways. You can use your profit to fund it, so you're putting everything back into the company, or you can go and pull out, from the line of credit or take a loan. So what is your tolerance? What is your risk tolerance for those two different ways? And so a lot of decisions need to be made, but if you have that clarity of where you need to, the number you're achieving or moving towards, that's really the biggest thing is to get you started.
Yeah. You said anywhere from 2 to 5 years to prepare. We say it takes a minimum of 3 to 5 years. But in reality, if they're building it properly all along, then there's not that much that needs to be done when they're starting to think about exiting because they've already prepared. And I think that is really where we want the people to start and to be in that situation where they've actually done the preparing all along. I heard somebody say, you need to build the company with the exit in mind.
100%.
So you may not be thinking about selling the company today, but to your point, if you grow a successful company and a profitable company, and you get to the point someday where you're just done, or health issues come in, or other things in your life tell you it's time to exit, then if you've done a proper job of preparing along the way, you're not going to have to scramble. And that's what I'm seeing right now. We have 13 million baby boomer business owners who are looking to sell in the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands, 70% of businesses listed for sale don't sell anyway. So who do you think is going to sell out of that group?
Mm-hmm. And, when you look at, the buyer pool, right? Who's out there buying businesses? Is it, private equity? Is it, a lot of people are doing roll-ups right now where they'll take, one specific industry and they'll gobble up all the little guys. They're looking for specific assets in your business. The other piece to look at is, who is my buyer that I'm building this for? And that will help you also be more strategic. Maybe they really want your customer list, and that's super valuable. Maybe they really want your
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the advanced level, right? There's all these, like, you got to incrementally add to this plan. But when you get to the point where you're that focused on, yes, I know when I want to sell X number of years, I know the price that I need to sell this thing for, and I know who my buyer is, you're light years ahead of all those businesses. that are going to be on the market, like you just mentioned. And that's going to be the difference of whether you are able to sell your business or not.
Right, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about private equity and investors and everything. So when would be a time where you'd want to bring an investor and maybe even give up a little bit of the equity of your company? What would be the advantage to doing that?
Yeah, I got a big smile on my face when you said that, because I don't think enough people realize the potential of bringing in an investor. Like, I'd rather have a little bit of a watermelon than a whole cantaloupe.
Yeah, kind
Run
of
the
like Shark
numbers.
Tank, they say, oh, I don't want to give away 20%, but they don't realize that they're going to quadruple their company in the first several months.
Absolutely, absolutely. So an investor is not somebody that's going to come and bring you cash and plop it down on the table and say, here you go, I'm investing in your company.
Oh, no.
No, an investor is bringing you resources. So when you are looking at what resources do I need to grow my company to hit this value that I'm trying to achieve? You
Right.
want to find an investor that has access to those resources.
Yeah.
And so I think that, yes, that's a very, very, if you are strategically building a company to exit it, you're going to need more than what you have just yourself. And so bringing in investors, giving them a small piece of equity for access to their resources, it's just going to fast track your plan and get you to where you want to go a lot faster. And you have more people with skin in the game, right? So it's not just you pushing the boulder up the hill, right? You've got other people that are going to have a financial gain out of achieving these goals that the company has set. And so it just helps, get you there that much faster.
I have a mentor who says, write a check for speed.
Yep.
Okay. You might be able to get there by yourself, but it's going to be slow going and you may never make it. If you write the check, or, in this case, allow somebody to come in and help you, you might get there 10 times faster. You might have 10 times more of the value. So, don't be afraid to do that. So, in the long run, what would actually affect a couple of things? And I know that there's a lot, but in your mind, in doing the projections that you do and everything, what are some of the simple things that they can do to actually accelerate the value of their business if they're looking to sell it?
Yes. So I think be really clear on what your business model is, what industry you're in, because the multiplier, right, varies from industry to industry. If there's a way you can bolt on a software, right? Maybe you're now a SaaS company. Well, a SaaS company is valued off of sales, not EBITDA, versus a service-based company that's, 2 times EBITDA. So really understand, work with if you're serious about selling your business and you're serious about having enough money to retire on, work with somebody that understands all these components so they can just walk you through it and say, okay, if you do this, then this, if you do this, then this. And you get to make that choice as the business owner, but you need to understand the arena that you're going into, because that statistic that you shared about the amount of business owners that list their business but don't actually sell it, that's a reality. And right now you have to be, in that small percentage that knows what they're doing and has the right team around them. We've worked with so many of our clients to help them exit. And when we do, they're in that percentage that exits versus somebody who, doesn't have access to this, or they've never thought to seek it out. It's really going to make the big difference for each of those business owners.
Absolutely. And like I said at the beginning, we like to be collaborative. We know our lane, you know your lane. When you bring in a advisor who takes an active advisory role, okay, that means that they're working with you on a regular basis. It's not a one and done. This is a process. It's not something that happens overnight. So you really need to be keeping that at the forefront, like you said, with your goals and where you want to go and how you want to get there, and then get the right people in place to help you get there. No business is an island, or they shouldn't be. And a lot of them are mom and pops, or they started as mom and pops, and now they've grown and they're still operating as a mom and pop. I said, you got to stop thinking like a mom and pop because you're not anymore. A couple $1 million of annual revenue, this is not working for you. So,
Um,
all right, to finish up, Andrea, any other words of wisdom for our audience here? I mean, I love what you said, and it is so true that they need to be forward thinking, not backward thinking.
Yeah, I think just the last little takeaway is have clean data. The more data you have, the better an advisor like myself or my team or Diane can come in and look at the information, because we don't want you to spend your hard-earned money on garbage in, garbage out. And so that would be the very first thing I would make sure you do is have, if you don't have a bookkeeper, get a bookkeeper. Have somebody check the bookkeeper's work, right? That's really important.
I've had clients who got embezzled, so it happens.
Oh yeah, but even just besides like that, that's scary enough on its own. But if you're making financial decisions in your business based off of bad data, um, you know, you're chasing your tail. And so have good data, pay for a good bookkeeper. They're worth their weight in gold and they pay for themselves over and over again. And that's the best starting point that I would say for any business owner that's listening, because then you can go out and share that information with other people and have confidence that those numbers and the resulting information and guidance you're going to get back is going to be good.
Absolutely. I agree. So thank you so much for being here today. We're going to have Andrea's contact information below the video. You're welcome to contact her. I'm sure she's open for questions. You can schedule time. Ask your questions if you've never talked to a CFO or you have questions exactly about how that would help you in your business. We want to encourage you to build that team of advisors. And if you have questions on what a strategy would be for an exit plan, or you're thinking about that, we're happy to have a conversation again too, to just kind of give you an idea of, number one, where you are, what the gaps might be, and then help you fill in those gaps to actually get you ready for that. So thanks again for joining us today, Andrea. I really appreciate your time and your expertise, and we appreciate having everybody here view this, and please share it with other business owners because we're trying to get the word out there. We feel like there's a lot of lack of knowledge for business owners because they're so busy working in their business. So thank you for sharing this and getting the word out for us. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll sign off for today and then see you next time around. Thank you.